Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into, well, the world of AI voice synthesis. It's moving so fast.
It really is. And this comparison we're looking at, it puts two really interesting tools side by side.
Yeah, Chatterbox from Resemble AI and ElevenLabs. We've got this document comparing them.
Right.
So our mission really is to break down the details,
Hmm.
highlight what makes them different.
And figure out who should use which one, basically. Help you navigate the choices.
Exactly. What's fascinating, as you said, is how they start from maybe different places philosophically.
Yeah, I think the source material really nails this. It points out this fundamental split.
Go on.
Well, Chatterbox is presented as open source, built more with developers in mind. Flexibility seems key.
Okay, developer first, open source,
Uh-huh.
and ElevenLabs.
That's proprietary, cloud-based, and
Yeah.
it feels geared more towards, say, content creators. Ease of use seems like the focus there.
Right, okay. And that basic difference probably shapes everything else, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the most important bit first. How do they actually sound? Voice quality.
Well, both are described as, impressively human-like. That's almost expected now, isn't it?
Table stakes, yeah. But there are differences, nuances,
Right. The source mentions Chatterbox has this tunable emotion exaggeration.
tunable emotion, so you can dial it up or down.
Seems like it, a specific kind of control, whereas ElevenLabs is more about context-sensitive nuance.
Meaning it tries to sound natural based on the words around it?
Yeah, automatically figuring out the flow. But here's where it gets, well, really interesting from the source.
What's that?
Listener tests. Apparently, 63.75% of listeners actually preferred Chatterbox.
Whoa, okay, that's a pretty big number, over 60%.
It is quite notable. While ElevenLabs gets a lot of praise for sounding natural, that preference suggests maybe Chatterbox's way of handling emotion hits differently.
Or maybe works better for certain kinds of content. Okay, so quality is nuanced. What about getting your voice in? Voice cloning.
Another key difference, ElevenLabs is famous for its, instant cloning, really short audio samples needed, super quick.
Right, you hear about that a lot. And Chatterbox.
They offer zero-shot cloning, which means you don't pre-train a model specifically on the voice. It just uses the reference sample. It takes about, 5 seconds?
So different methods again,
Correct.
instant versus zero shot in a few seconds.
Okay.
And back to emotion, you mentioned Chatterbox's tuning.
Yeah, the source really highlights that as a distinct advantage for Chatterbox. Direct, fine-grained control over how it sounds emotionally.
Which ElevenLabs doesn't really offer in the same direct way. It relies more on its automatic interpretation.
Exactly. It's more automated context reading over there. Now, if we look at language reach,
Languages, yeah.
ElevenLabs pulls ahead significantly there. Supports, over 30 languages?
30. Wow. Okay, that's huge for anyone doing global content.
Definitely. Compared to Chatterbox, whose earlier versions were more limited on the language front.
Got it. Now, deployment. This can be a really big deal depending on who you are.
Crucial point, yeah.
Chatterbox gives you options, right? Cloud, like ElevenLabs,
Or you can deploy it yourself.
Yeah?
On your own servers.
Yeah.
What people call on-premise or self-hosted.
And ElevenLabs is just cloud.
Strictly cloud only, according to the source.
Okay, so why does that on-premise option matter so much for Chatterbox users?
Well, think about large companies, enterprises, or anyone super strict about data privacy.
Right, they want to keep everything in-house.
Exactly. Keeping data and the processing internal can be non-negotiable for some. Control over the infrastructure, too.
Makes sense. Anything else on the tech side?
Yeah, the source also mentions Chatterbox includes something called Perth neural watermarking.
Watermarking, like for tracing it?
Precisely. It embeds a hidden signal in the audio, so you can potentially trace where synthesized audio came from.
Interesting. And ElevenLabs doesn't have that currently.
Not mentioned in the source, no. It seems Chatterbox has built that in, which touches on, ethical considerations and traceability.
Yeah, definitely an important area. Okay, so if we pull this all together, the who wins for what, based on the source?
It lines up pretty well with those core differences we talked about.
So Chatterbox leans towards developers,
Yeah.
enterprises.
Yeah, folks who value that open source aspect, the deep customization, the privacy angle with on-premise, that fine-tuned emotion control.
Got it. And ElevenLabs.
Seems like the go-to for content creators, people who want a really smooth user interface, quick results, maybe use their voice marketplace.
And critically, that wide multilingual support.
Absolutely. If you need 30 languages, that's a major draw.
So the final verdict, boiling it down from the source. Chatterbox is kind of the power user tool. For developers, enterprises needing control, privacy, Deep tuning.
Right. While ElevenLabs is more the polished, accessible leader for creators wanting speed, ease of use, and that language breadth, fast, lifelike results without needing deep technical setup.
Okay, that clarifies the landscape quite a
It
bit.
does, and it leaves us and you listening with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it?
Which is,
Well, we see these really rapid advances, right? And these
Mhm.
very different paths, open versus closed source, cloud versus self-hosted, control versus automation.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, how do we strike the right balance between making this tech easy for everyone to use, allowing deep customization, and handling the really important stuff like privacy and,
Yeah.
being able to trace where AI voice content actually comes from?
That's a great point. Balancing accessibility, power, and responsibility.
Yeah.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.